Good morning, everybody. We're just going to let people calm down for a moment. Once the room's calmed down, we'll get things started. Please do put your mics on mute if possible, and very happy to see cameras turned on. It's always good to see who we're talking to today. Thank you for joining a slightly earlier webinar than our usual time. I am going to kick off if that's okay now. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Caring webinar. Thank you for joining us for what I suspect will be a very practical and highly relevant discussion on how speed can fix your care recruitment challenges. So recruitment remains one of the biggest operational challenges facing adult social care, as we all know. Across the sector, providers continue to experience vacancies, high agency usage, candidate drop-off, and increasing competition for the talent that we have in adult social care. Yet while much attention is often placed on labour shortages, pay rates, advertising spend, many providers are finding that the real challenge really sits much closer to home within their recruitment process. Now, candidates today are applying for multiple roles simultaneously. The provider that responds first, communicates clearly and creates a positive candidate experience is often the provider that secures the hire. So speed is no longer simply an administrative function. It's become part of an organisation's recruitment strategy and candidate experience. At the same time, providers are spending significant sums on recruitment activity without always understanding what is working, what is not working, or when the candidates are being lost. And there's questions around ownership of response times, candidate engagement, recruitment accountability. They can all have a direct impact on vacancy levels, agency spend, and ultimately service delivery. And today's session is really about exploring how relatively small changes to the recruitment process can really help to improve outcomes, strengthen candidate engagement, reduce wage expenditure, and convert more applicants into committed hires. Now, the focus is not necessarily on doing more recruitment, but it's doing it differently. And we are really delighted to be joined today by Stephen Forster from the Care Social Network. And Stephen works very closely with care providers across the sector. He has a huge amount of experience and background actually working in care services and as a recruiter for care services. And he's going to be sharing some practical insights, examples and approaches that organisations he's worked with have evidenced, and those that you can take away and implement immediately. And as usual, the session is being recorded, so please do use the chat function if you'd like to raise a question during the conversation. And to submit any questions, and we'll get to those in a Q&A session afterwards. We'll try to cover as many of those as possible towards the end. I'll also drop my email into the chat for anyone who would prefer to send me a question via email, so I can ask that question anonymously on your behalf. Stephen's going to speak for around 25 minutes and take us through some slides. Copies of the slides and the recording will be circulated before the end of the week. And once Stephen has kind of finished speaking, I'll facilitate a Q&A. And at that point, you can also come off mute and raise your hand and ask Stephen a question directly if you wish. So without further ado, I am going to ask Stephen to introduce himself, to start his slides and to kick us off today. So Stephen, over to you.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hopefully you can see my slideshow now. So yeah, lovely to meet everybody. My name's Stephen from the Care Social Network. So yeah, I'm actually, I always like to let people know this very early. I'm an ex-care assistant and an ex-HR and recruitment manager in care. So ultimately, today's goal, I really want to share my experiences over the last 10 years on how speed and giving registered managers more time back can help care companies remove all recruitment headaches. So hopefully by the end of today, you can go away and you have some practical tips and tricks that you can literally take away and implement straight away. So yeah, Richard, I'll carry on with the slides if that's okay. Perfect. So I'd like to talk about two topics today. So I really want to talk about why time to contact is the most overlooked problem in social care recruitment. Now, a lot of people talk about time to hire. So I would define time to hire as when somebody applies for a role and then they actually start working for your care company. But I want to go one step further than that and talk about time to contact. So Time to contact, in my opinion, is how quickly can we get to candidates when they apply for a role? Can we get to them before any other care company? And how long is it taking us to do this? So, as we know, when candidates apply for a role, the clock starts straight away. Candidates are applying for between 7 and 12 jobs online. That's before they get hired, and it's taking the average carer 3 to 4 days to be offered a role typically. So you can imagine now, if it's taking the average candidate 7 to 12 jobs that they're applying for, you as a care provider need to make sure that you beat every other care company that the candidate has applied for. So you ultimately have a 1 in 12 chance, you could argue. So what are you going to do to make sure you can get in front of that candidate first? What are you going to do? What actions are you going to put in place, and how can you make that happen? We also want to talk about a massive stat, which is around 73% of care candidates never actually hear back from their online application. That's based on over 2,000 care staff in the last couple of months we've done, and then we did 2025 as well. So you can imagine the detrimental effect that 73% of care candidates never hearing back from an online application. What happens next? These challenges lead to no-shows, demotivated office teams, care managers, increasing agency staff, huge turnover, massive expenses, and demotivated for your permanent staff. So, what is the solution? Now, the biggest thing I talk about all the time, and I want to talk about this when I was an internal recruiter as well, is contacting candidates within 24 hours of application. I think this, in all care providers, should be absolutely non-negotiable. Why do we need to contact candidates fast? Because, as we know, they're applying for between 7 and 12 jobs. So if you imagine now, a candidate applies for a role and you don't call them within 24 hours, but your competition does, you're already one step behind your competition, aren't you? Because they've contacted that candidate already, therefore they've gave themselves a massive head start. So we always encourage contacting candidates before 24 hours. Now, we will come on to why this isn't possible for all care companies, and I'm sure a lot of you will have questions on why this isn't possible. But this is something we will talk about later in regards to, should registered managers have this responsibility? Should it be internal recruiters, or should it be outsourced? Who should be in charge of that? Now, the reason we want to contact candidates within 24 hours as well is, imagine what that does for your care company's reputation. You've shown that candidate that you're really eager to talk to them, you're enthusiastic, you're not ignoring them, you're organised, your care company is on a different level. Now, care companies who aren't able to contact within 24 hours, and we know this is the majority, then let's say you spend 2 or 3 days to contact that candidate. What kind of message does that send to the candidate? I would argue it shows you're not organised and you just don't have the time to contact them, and you're not as enthusiastic as the companies who have contacted within 24 hours. I really want to share a quick anecdote about my experience of applying in care. So I used to be a supermarket manager, completely opposite to care, never worked in care before. And I hit a stumbling block in my career where I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went on a job board and applied for about 10 to 15 care assistant jobs online. Now, I received a phone call from a care company within 25 minutes. This person who called me was the owner of the care company at the time, gave me an unbelievable phone screen, 10, 15-minute phone screen, and made me feel unbelievably special and wanted. That is exactly the reason why we do it. Look how that particular lady made me feel unbelievable, because she contacted me straight away. I applied for roughly 10 to 15 roles. I never received a reply from about 90% of those roles that I applied for. So it just goes to show, if you do contact candidates quick, you can hire staff as fast as possible. Now, the next step I want to talk about is really understanding the candidate recruitment experience. I imagine that most people on this talk and most people in care have probably worked in care before. So I'd really like you to go back to imagine when you applied for care roles. How did it make you feel when a company called you, or if they didn't call you? So really what you need to be focusing on is an unbelievable phone screen. I cannot stress enough how important the phone screen is. The first opportunity you get to sell yourself, sell your company, and make yourself stand out. From my experience of doing this myself, I've conducted over 10,000 phone screens and I've interviewed face-to-face over 1,000 people. I genuinely believe a 10 to 15-minute phone screen is long enough to sell your care company. Sell yourself, sell your USPs, make yourself stand out, and you can really get to know the candidate as well. And I'm a huge values-based recruitment advocate. I talk about this all the time on LinkedIn. You need to focus on the values of the person. 10 to 15-minute phone screen, and then clear call to actions. What do I mean by that? So imagine you've spoken to somebody on the phone now, they've met all your criteria, they're really enthusiastic, they're really compassionate, kind, and you want to meet them face to face. You now need to have a real clear call to action on inviting the person in for a face-to-face interview, a really clear email, maybe even a video welcoming them in, sending them into your website and your social media pages, constantly selling your care company. Then you need to conduct a ridiculously good face-to-face interview, which we can talk about as well. Then imagine what this has done now. You've gave this candidate, you've called them in 24 hours, you've invited them in for interview the next day, you've conducted a really great face-to-face interview. Now you've probably offered them a role. The candidates before, the care companies before who've not contacted this candidate, you've already conducted a face-to-face interview because you've been quick and proactive. So you're already beating all your competition. Your competition could be paying more an hour, but you've beaten your competition because you've got to the candidates first. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is about delivering that outstanding recruitment experience. Now, this is a huge bottleneck for a lot of care companies. I know there'll be a hell of a lot of people who have a lot to say about this, and I'm happy to answer questions. So you simply have to review all applications. Everybody who applies for you, you have to review them all. Why? Because I'm telling you now, I've seen this happen thousands of times. If you only focus on people with experience and you're completely neglecting people without experience or career changes, then you're going to miss some unbelievable hidden gems. I've seen this happen thousands of times. I'm an example of it. I was a supermarket manager, no care experience, no personal care experience, no my family care, nothing. Imagine if the person I applied for 10 years ago ignored me. I wouldn't have been a carer for 12 months, best job of my life, best experience of my life, and I now wouldn't have my own consultancy. So imagine if that person ignored my application. Look what's happened to me and happens to loads of people in care. There's some unbelievable hidden gems. You can't tell from a CV if somebody's empathetic, kind, compassionate, hardworking, loyal, dedicated. You just can't tell that. Now, some people argue about this all day long and say, look, somebody's got an old CV. They've had 10 different jobs in the last 10 years. Yeah, I understand all that. But I still think you need to give candidates an unbelievable chance and let them have a say. And it's only a 5-10 minute phone screen, remember, and you can get a lot out of people in that time. Now, reviewing all candidates will literally take your care company to the next level. I've seen this happen so many times. And if there's one thing I want people to take away today, it's really, really focusing on screening everybody that applies for you. Now, I have a case study here. This is one of our clients. This is a really great client, residential care homes in the north of England. Now, they came to us with crazy challenges, quite painful challenges, to be honest, which was difficult to hear. Rest assured, we did get positive ending here. So these free residential care homes had unbelievably high agency costs. There was no accountability for agency staff. So the register manager was simply saying, look, it's just quicker and easier to get agency staff in. Let's just do that. And they're not trained on recruitment. So, of course, they're going to turn to agency. Complaints from residents, family members, no continuity of care, admin teams ridiculously stretched with massive workloads, saying that their priority was recruitment and then knew they had an agency problem. So it's the top of the priority list, but it becomes the bottom of the list because there's no time for recruitment. We're seeing this happen with more and more care homes. Ridiculously excessive spends on job boards, which is painful for me to see. And the amount of care companies now spending far too much on job boards is happening in abundance, often between £3,000 and £10,000 per month on job boards. This is eye-watering numbers. Registered managers feeling ridiculously overwhelmed by recruitment shortages. So it's just a vicious circle, isn't it? Recruitment problems, agencies spending loads of money, no education on job boards, don't know how to do phone screens, haven't got the time, nobody's showing us what to do. It's just a vicious circle going round and round and round. Now, what changes were made and how did we help them? So they outsourced their job board management. I don't know about many people on here now, but I don't know if there's a lot of care companies out there who would say they understand job boards very, very well. And especially when you're just passing it to, with respect, admin teams. And I've been an administrator, and I definitely didn't know about job boards when I was an administrator. Outsourcing the job boards is now saving the team 2 to 3 hours per day, roughly 15 hours a week. Imagine what you could do with 15 hours a week back. Just think of what you could do with that time. We train the admin team to focus on the speed and conducting amazing phone screens, not sounding robotic, being polite, really selling the company. Going back to when I used to be an internal recruiter for a care company, I want to make this clear as well. It's the first impression you make to people. So the phone screen is unbelievably, I would argue it's the most important role of your recruitment because it's the first impression you're making to anybody, isn't it? Now, when I was an internal recruiter, it suited my personality. I love sales. I love building rapport. I love processes. I like targets, but that's my personality. That's what I enjoy doing. I would argue, look, is there many people who are doing recruitment and they're built the same way that I'm built? And if not, that's okay. Maybe recruitment just isn't for them and they shouldn't be given the role because they're not good at it, and that's okay. But should you be focused on giving the role to somebody who is more suited? This particular care home here, screening of staff was also outsourced. They said they were overwhelmed by the amount of people applying on job boards and they just didn't have enough time to screen the staff. Screening the staff being outsourced allowed their admin team and the register managers to have more time for face-to-face interviews. More time for face-to-face interviews means more hires, less agency, less stress. We reduced the job board spend by 70%, saving between £3,000 and £6,000 per month. Think of what that does over a year. You're talking about 40 to £80,000 saved per year. Completely wasted money before nobody guiding or showing them what to do. Now, registered managers at these free care homes plus the care managers, 6 to 8 in total, completely now de-stressed because they have a full team of permanent care staff. They're not relying on agency. They can manage their workload and they can work better in their role. Now, topic 2, second topic that I want to discuss is why registered managers shouldn't be running recruitment and what to do instead. Now, maybe a lot of people have a big say in this, and I hope they do. This is my personal opinion, and I'm sure there's some registered managers here who would argue that, you know what, the early stages of recruitment, you're completely right, Stephen, I do not want to be a part of it. Face-to-face interviews, I do want to be a part of. Offering people a role, yes, I do want to be a part of that. But the early stages, absolutely not. So the problem we've got, this is based on 412 registered managers asked in November last year. And these, in my opinion, are eye-watering statistics, and I'd love to know if you agree or not. So 85% of managers, registered managers, say they would prefer not to manage job boards. That doesn't surprise me at all. Job boards is not simply a matter of posting a job, checking people who have applied and calling up people. Job boards take a hell of a lot of knowledge. There's algorithms, there's tech, there's daily budgets, campaigns. I could chat to you for hours about job boards. It's something I specialise in. Over 90% of registered managers say they're aware no-shows to interviews could be down to not contacting candidates fast enough. Think of that. 90% of registered managers said they know no-shows are a problem, and it's probably down to not contacting candidates fast enough. Going back to what I said at the start, not contacting candidates fast enough. Well, the candidate's already been contacted by another care company, haven't they? So they may say they're going to show up for interview for you, but they've already been offered 2 or 3 other roles. It creates no-shows. This is happening every single day. No-shows in the UK for interviews are getting extremely high, and I'm sure people within this talk have got no-show issues as well. Over 91% of registered managers feel that recruitment administration slows them down from doing other more pressing matters within a care home. So you can imagine this now. If registered managers have to do recruitment administration, think of what this leads to now. They're doing 1,000,001 other things. We know that. We know registered managers have an unbelievably high-pressured role, an amazing role, a fantastic role. But I would argue, should they be doing the recruitment administration? No, no is the answer. They absolutely should not be. And that is not out of ego or not a willingness to learn. It's just there are other pressing matters that need to be addressed within a care home. Now, rushed recruitment and rushed phone screens, which is happening with care companies. Imagine what that leads to. Rushed phone screens, not listening to candidates when they're talking to you on the phone, robotic phone calls. You sound disinterested. What impression does this give off to candidates when you're acting like this? If you're not enthusiastic and you're not selling and you're not telling me about your amazing care home, your good or outstanding rating, the amazing training you have, the fantastic people who work with you, then why should I want to come for an interview with you? The guys who call me an hour earlier have really sold their care home to me. So I'm going to go for an interview with them. I might tell you I'm coming for an interview with you, but it's just because I'm trying to be polite and I want to get you off the phone. We don't want to be doing this. Now, over 92% of registered managers said they would prefer either a centralized recruiter or recruitment team or to outsource recruitment over managing recruitment themselves. This is a huge number. Nearly 100% of registered managers said they prefer a centralized recruiter or recruitment team. Now, I've been an internal recruiter for a care company, an amazing role. I loved every second of it. I had a relationship with the registered managers, 4 registered managers. They would tell me what kind of people we needed, what shifts, what personalities, what rota patterns. We had a great communication. So you've got registered manager and me as an internal recruiter. When they told me what kind of staff we needed, I was buzzing. I couldn't wait to find these candidates. But again, going back to what I said earlier, this is my personality. I'm driven to fill roles because I'm sales driven and I'm KPI driven. I would only encourage having a centralized recruitment team if you have internal recruiters that are unbelievably ecstatic about wanting to fill roles. If they're not, then you could argue, yes, should it be outsourced? So you can outsource recruitment as well. Of course you can. And you might argue, look, outsourcing recruitment is leaving it to the professionals. They can arrange the interviews for us. They can build the rapport. And then having a face-to-face interview, the registered manager takes over this. So there's fors and against of having a centralized recruiter or outsourced recruitment. But I would say you need to look at either one of those. Absolutely. Now, what happens when registered managers are stretched and overwhelmed? Well, they spend most of their time firefighting rather than leading. We know this is happening all the time. Every registered managers I speak to all the time are often saying, look, the reality is, Stephen, I just don't have time to do this. When I was an internal recruiter, going back to what I was saying earlier, the registered managers told me all the time, look, you coming in, Stephen, is taking so much pressure away from me. I can focus on my team. I can focus on training. I can focus on growing the team. I can focus on compliance. Like I can focus on the things why I applied for a registered manager. I would argue all day long. I don't think there's many registered managers who have as their job description recruitment administrator. I just don't think that's the case. I just don't think that is happening at all. It's just not happening. So imagine reducing the fatigue, decision making. Once you outsource your recruitment or have a centralized recruitment team to manage this for you, you've got no idea how many headaches will go away for the registered manager. It makes life so much easier. And it's just something I would highly, highly encourage. And there's probably a lot of registered managers out there who say, look, I don't want to complain to my owner or my boss because if I suggest that I outsource recruitment, then it makes me look lazy or demotivated. Absolutely not. No chance at all. Because if you're demotivated and stressed, you're eventually going to want to leave the care company, and that's not good for anybody. So we've got another comparison here. This is another case study for 4 care homes in the south of England who we worked with. Now, their cost per hire, February 2025 to May 2025, was between £900 and £1,100 cost per hire. I might add as well, this is advertising cost per hire, I should have mentioned. So it cost them as an advertising cost, roughly £1,000 per candidate. Over £40,000 agency spend per month. No continuity of care. They even said, I went to meet this care company. When I met the permanent staff, they said having agency staff in was highly demotivating for them because the agency staff were paid more than they are, which was just demoralizing for them. Now, what happened the next 3 months when we trained them on how to do recruitment themselves? The cost per hire was reduced between £180 and £285. Just think of that cost saving on an advertising board. Think what you can do with that saving. Agency staff is now only used in emergencies. So absolutely there is a place for agency staff. I talk about this all the time. I've got good relationships with agencies, but it should be emergencies only. You should not be relying on agency staff to run your care company. Absolutely not. Now they now have excellent continuity of care, motivated workforce, and less burnout on all staff members. They're not firefighting. They're running a really great care company. And it's because they've made some subtle changes. So they had, for two of the care homes, they hired a dedicated full-time recruiter to focus purely on recruitment. Now, these two care homes, that 40-hour-a-week recruiter, their role was simple: provide candidates with an amazing recruitment experience, phone screen, make it amazing, sell the company to them, make them. It's impossible that they would want to miss this interview because you've sold the company so well. Face-to-face interview, sell the company, introduce them to people around the home, make them feel wanted, offer management, offer the role to a candidate within 24 hours. I would argue on the spot. I did this myself. We had a 96% retention rate at the care company I was with, and we always offered the role on the spot. Some people would argue this looks desperate. It only looks desperate if you make it sound desperate. Two of the care homes, they outsourced their recruitment, so they used a third party to arrange the interviews on their behalf. Again, all candidates were screened within 24 hours. We've discussed this. It's just a simple non-negotiable now. I would argue within a few hours, but 24 hours as a starting point should be something you're aiming for. Now, what happens to candidates when you call them within 24 hours? This happened with me. Remember, I said at the start, they feel privileged, they feel wanted. It shows the candidates that you're organised. It shows that you're keen to hire them. It does not show desperation. It shows to me that you're organised and you're keen. If you call a candidate up and say, "You've applied for a care role for us. Firstly, can I thank you for applying for a care role for us? What a privilege that is. Secondly, I'm not too bothered about your CV right now. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what's made you apply for this role?" You're getting to know the person. You're focusing on the values. You're focusing on them as a human being, as opposed to, "I can see on your CV here you've got no experience." Why would that matter? Why would experience matter? You're focusing on the person. The care industry in England, we are in 5 years, we're going to be in a scary place if we do not focus on values of a person. We need to be attracting more and more people to want to work in care. Now, the registered managers, they can now, because they have an internal recruitment team at two of the homes and they outsource to two of the other homes, they can now do tasks that they're motivated to do. Ensuring the care home provides safe, effective, caring, responsive, and well-led care. Taking away the recruitment headaches for them. There's people showing up at their door to come for interviews now. They don't have to screen hundreds of people every week. They don't have to conduct phone screens anymore. There's people showing up at the door, and then the register manager can conduct the face-to-face interview themselves. The register manager can focus on compliance and relevant legislation. Absolutely what they should be focusing on. They can lead, supervise, and support care staff and senior staff, which is a happier workforce. So now imagine they've not had any time to focus on recruitment, growing a team, motivation, supervision. You've given them back 5 hours a week at least. So 20 hours a week the register manager now has. On average, think of what they can do and what they can create in your care homes. Compliance DBS references are all conducted by an admin team at each home. This is essential. 4 of the care homes, 2 administrators. So one administrator full-time had 2 care homes. The other administrator had the other 2 care homes. They focus purely on compliance. References, DBS checks. Inductions, training, keeping candidates warm. This is something we don't talk about enough as well. When you offer somebody a role, we know that it's taken a while for them to start on rota. Candidates need to be kept warm, calling them up, updating them, telling them you can't wait for them to start, getting your CEO to send them a text saying you can't wait for them to start, bespoke videos. These are things that should be non-negotiable. So I've spoken for a while now. So what can we learn and what questions do we need to ask? So going away today, and hopefully whoever's on this call, whoever hears me speaking, we stay in touch for a long time. I'm always here to offer professional advice. I would go away today and ask yourself and your team, do you feel your registered manager prefer to have a centralized recruitment team or to maybe outsource recruitment admin? Genuinely go away and ask that question, and please make it clear to your registered managers, look, you're not going to be judged by the answer here. I just want to know, what's stopping you from having more success? What can we do here so you can be more successful? Would you prefer a central recruitment team or would you prefer outsourced? And if so, why? That's fine. Let's have those kind of conversations. Don't be nervous to have those conversations. I would spend the next 2 to 4 weeks analysing, if you're a registered manager or if you're an operations manager or an owner, analysing just how much time is spent on registered managers on recruitment duties. Analyse it. Don't spend too much time and just think, oh yeah, I'm screening staff again. Somebody's asked me to do administration. I've been asked to call candidates. I'm doing the reference checking. Just analyse how long this takes, and I think you'll be surprised. I bet it's a lot longer than you thought it was. Should recruitment tasks be left to the experts, to people who enjoy recruitment processes? I would argue registered managers do not enjoy recruitment processes and they do not want to do recruitment. I've touched on this already. When I was an internal recruiter, if I was asked to do registered manager responsibilities, not a chance. I don't want to do it. I'm not skilled enough. I don't know what I'm doing. So why should it be any different? If a registered manager is asked to do recruitment, some people might say it's part of their job role. I would disagree with that. I think managing a team and growing a team and training a team is part of their job, not the early stages. Spend the next 2 to 4 weeks calling people within the first 24 hours of application. Please just try and do this and really sell your care company. I think you'll see a significant increase in interviews arranged, decrease in no-shows to interviews, and an increase in overall hires. Imagine what this does to your care company. If you increase your interviews, yes, let's say your no-shows are 50%, that's okay. Because if you increase your interviews by 300%, it doesn't matter that your no-shows are high because you've increased your interviews, haven't you? If you increase your interviews, you offer more people a role. You offer more people a role, you grow your care company, you remove agency, you have a less stressed team. The whole point of this and the message I want people to receive is that we want registered managers to thrive. We want registered managers to lead and inspire. And we really want registered managers to stay in the industry. I'm tired of hearing registered managers saying, they're leaving or they're going to have to do different roles because they're simply overwhelmed. We need to keep registered managers within the care industry. We want the care industry to thrive. We need registered managers to stay within the industry. That's everything from me. Not sure how long I've spoke, so I haven't got my clock up, but hopefully you can take away a hell of a lot there. And I want people to take away more motivation than anything from this. You should see care recruitment as a positive. It doesn't have to be dreaded. It's not this again. And don't let it overwhelm you because I'm telling you now, I've shown two case studies today. I've shown, but I have hundreds, and it can be done. You just need the tools. Thank you so much. And yeah, Richard, more than happy to answer anybody's questions.
Thank you, Stephen. I have got quite a few questions actually. I think what you set out is kind of a real practical reminder, kind of like that recruitment is not necessarily just about how many people you're looking for or how much time and money we spend on the recruitment process. It's really about the speed, the quality, and the organisation itself and how it's organised around recruitment. And I think you make a really important point around the clock starts kind of like ticking the moment someone applies. Because if they are applying for multiple jobs and they don't hear back quickly, we shouldn't be surprised that they're going elsewhere. And we spend a lot of money if you're spending those hundreds of pounds on trying to attract someone and not following up afterwards, then we're kind of throwing money down the drain. And I think you've challenged us to kind of really think about how we should be kind of carrying out the recruitment process. And our most valuable assets are our staff, but our registered managers are at the top of that pyramid. And many did not sign up to become HR recruiters. Of course, they have to have a role in the recruitment process, and some managers are absolutely brilliant at it, but it's not a core skill set for most managers, and they need a lot of support. But we put a lot of responsibility on their shoulders to be able to make sure that they can kind of manage that kind of interview recruitment process. And I think it can become overwhelming for some. So we don't want to remove.
What we hear, Richard, as well is we hear a lot of. Okay, if you take away, it's almost like I don't want to give this away because I want to be in charge of who works in my care home. I need to check them first. It's almost like a lack of trust sometimes in people, and that can come down to training as well. Like I said, when I was an internal recruiter, me and the register manager had an unbelievable experience. She would weekly tell me, look, where are we with recruitment? What kind of people have been applying? What kind of values have people been saying? And then it needs to be a joint effort because if the registered manager trusts the internal recruiter or the administrator, then that takes the weight off their shoulders because otherwise they're literally just firefighting constantly.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to duck into questions because I have got a lot. So I'm going to ask you to be quite clear and concise on the response if that's okay. There's a great one coming from Callum actually in the chat, and it says, we've already got an internal recruitment team and carry out pre-screens. with every candidate, but what kind of questions should we be asking? And I think this is the $6 million question. You talked about this process, but what are some of those core questions that you think are really important for that pre-screening?
Yeah, you know what? The questions I would focus on instantly are values-based questions. So you have to remember when somebody applies for a role, if you're having a phone screen, I don't know about you, but I was nervous when I applied for a role. Are they judging me? What are they going to think? I really want to work here. So I would focus the first minute to two on calming the anxiety levels down. So talk about something that's happening now, or something you might have seen on a CV. So you might see on a CV hobbies and interests, horse riding, football, whatever. Create a story and an anecdote as if you were talking to this person in a pub or a cafe. Literally, like, create a conversation. Say, "Oh, I see from your CV you like horse riding. Tell me about that." There's nothing wrong with creating friendly relationships with people at the start. What tends to happen is, because I've audited hundreds of care companies and listened in on phone screens. Hi, you've applied for a care role with us at ABC Care Home. Just checking when are you free for an interview, and it's often down to a lack of experience. To answer the question, I would focus on the values of the person. Now, eventually, of course, you need to get down to the nitty-gritty, and people are going to say, what about compliance? What about safety? What about DBS checks? What about, have they had police records? Of course, yeah, you can focus on them on the last 60 seconds. So 5 to 10 minutes on the person, 5 minutes on your care company, you selling yourself and the company to them. Last 60 seconds before you come in, Lisa, I just need to double check here because it's part of our process. This is a full-time role. I need to make sure you are able to work full-time plus alternate weekends, or whatever your non-negotiables are. And just you can still focus on them, but make sure you're dealing with the other areas before that, because you want to make this person remember you. If you're robotic and just asking the same questions as everybody else, they're not going to remember you.
So put them at ease, do a little bit of work on sort of something that's kind of almost agnostic to the process but related to CV. So make that common ground, focus on values, and then look at the practicalities. That's great. There is a question that's been put in the chat by Tina, actually, if anyone can share their experience of video screening. And I don't know whether you've got any views on, should that first contact be a video call, or should it be a phone call, or when should you introduce a video call before you've actually met someone?
Yeah,
and some
great
thoughts
question.
around whether that person doesn't work.
Yeah, great question. The question I would ask back in regards to looking at processes, why have you chosen, or why are you thinking of doing a video interview? So is the video interview replacing your face-to-face interview, or is it replacing your phone screen? Is there a reason why you want to do a video screen? Do you want to see the person? If so, why? So I would ask those kind of questions. Why do we want to do this? I personally think it's a lot more practical, quicker, and convenient to do a phone screen, personally. But I'm not against video screens at all, as long as they're not replacing your face-to-face interviews. I don't think they should be replacing face-to-face interviews. No, I think we would need to be building rapport and getting people in front of us and making them meet your teams. Face-to-face interviews are an unbelievable. If you get people to a face-to-face interview, this is probably a subject for another time. You should be converting 90% of those people.
Brilliant. And just maybe on that, what should a good, well, I think we've covered that one actually, but a phone screening, the good poise. How can providers make sure they're not filtering out good candidates too early, particularly people who are new to care? Now, you were new to care, and I've been looking at a process recently, and it scores people based on their effectiveness in role, and it puts people with experience higher than those without experience. But actually, everyone starts with no experience at some point in their career in social care, because people are new to care. So, and those new to care people are really important, because we don't want to keep people just moving around the system. We want people who are new to come into the sector. So, how can we make sure we're doing that correctly?
Yeah, so the big thing is look, the reality is, and this is the feedback I've received. I don't necessarily agree with it. People would say, look, it's just easier to hire people with experience. Now, I don't agree with that. They say it's easy because they understand care, they know the ins and outs. If they're doing personal care, it's not new to them. I don't like that attitude personally. I would be looking at your training and the way you're selling the care company to them. Everybody who started in care didn't have experience. That sort of ends the argument straight away, because we all didn't work in care. Yes, we may have had personal care, I worked with our family members, but we never had professional care experience. You'll be really surprised. I'm an example of this. So I never worked in care, but when I was in my 20s, my mum had breast cancer. She's still alive now, and she's got a great life. My brother had a brain tumor. He's alive as well, but they had care, and I saw that care in their house. Now, I wonder subconsciously that's why I did apply for care. Maybe it is because I saw what people were doing and I wanted to give back. You'd be surprised how many people who apply who haven't got professional care experience. If you dig deep and get to know them really well, you'll be surprised how many people would go, oh, sorry, yeah, my dad or my brother or sister or whatever had care. And then that's a really great opportunity to go, oh, tell me more about that. Because that you can open the candidate up then and say, oh, is this okay? Are you telling me that that's because you saw how they were getting treated and that's why you want to work in care? And then that's a great conversation. That's a great starting point.
And so, and there's another question that's come into the chat actually, Stephen, around what's the sort of standard time between screening and starting? And Tina mentions that, feels like they're losing people due to a long process, especially kind of references not coming back quickly. So what does a good candidate journey look like from application to first shift?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously external factors that play a part here. References taking a while, DBSs, etc. But so to answer your question, there's no number, there's no amount of days. Now you should be tracking this yourself over 12 months and looking at how long it is taking, because like if somebody has a face-to-face interview and you offer them a role, which I used to do, I was getting references started straight away. I was doing the DBS straight away as well. So I would ultimately focus on your current processes and not slowing down anything internally. If you're losing people during the onboarding process, which happens for a hell of a lot of care companies, there can often be some internal processes that you've maybe not mastered. So are you updating candidates every 3 to 4 days? I would be doing that. If I'm an internal recruiter, I'm calling candidates, building a rapport. We can't wait for you to start with us. Just so you know, DBS is on stage 3 now. Sending them text messages, sending them bespoke messages, and really making them feel special. Because if you do all that, if you do all those things I've just mentioned, and somebody doesn't start working with you, then at least you can hold your head up high and say, "Look, we tried everything here. We really did," and stay positive and keep going. Because what else can you do? This goes back to look, arrange more face-to-face interviews. And then if people do drop off, it doesn't matter because you've offered more people a role. So I always like to go by an 70 to 80% rule. Look, if we offer 100 people a role in 6 months, I'm assuming 70 to 80 people will start. So take that number into consideration as well. And that will compensate for the people who have dropped off.
Yeah, and that's I think the industry stats, I'm going back probably 12 months, were that we lose 50% through the application process and 50% within the first 12 months. So out of the 100, only 25 are the long-term stayers. But your suggestion there is keep them warm throughout the process, SMSs, text calls. And I think we've had a conversation before about potentially getting them into the service at some point so they can kind of be part of it. There's obviously they can't perform care tasks, but inviting them in to come and see it, get used to it, is also another useful. So in terms of the measurements though, so what are some of those useful metrics for a small and medium-sized provider to start tracking to know? Because if you don't measure something, you can't control. So what are the key stats that we should be measuring to work out whether we're doing things effectively or whether we need to start improving on them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many metrics, but the main ones I would be focusing on straight away are, look, okay, how many vacancies do we have to fill? Now, what is how are we going to fill these vacancies? So one of the metrics I would be saying, look, what is the source of our applications? So job boards, social media, referral platforms, walk-ins, whatever. You need to track that over the last 12 months so you have that data. What was the most powerful one, where you were getting the most applications and hires? Secondly, what was the cost, to the advertising cost on these platforms? Thirdly, how many interviews did you arrange from these platforms? If job boards was 90%, you need to focus on job boards. If referrals was 90%, you need to do more referrals. So how many interviews were arranged? Thirdly, so we've done cost, how many interviews were arranged? How many people attended the interview? So let's say, look, job boards, yes, 90% of the candidates came from job boards. But interestingly, 80% of people on job boards were no-shows to interviews. Is that a correlation? Why is that happening? Hold on, referrals, 100% of people attended. Okay, that's interesting. We need to focus more on referrals potentially. How many people were offered a role and how many people started working for you? So a lot of people, a lot of internal recruiters will say to their owners, yeah, I offered 50 people a role this month, which looks great. Okay, but the stat I'm looking for is how many people started on rota, not how many were offered. That's completely irrelevant. Offering somebody a role is easy. How many people started on rota, and then the last one you need to track the 3 month uh, induction or early stages, because imagine if you offer 50 people a role in 6 months, but 80% of them leave within the first 3 months. You have an internal bottleneck where you're not good at the first 3 months because why are people leaving you? Does that help? There's a lot of stages there, but those are the main ones I would be focusing on.
I think they do, and they're all very measurable. But if you look at the data, there are industry stats that you can compare yourselves against, and you compare yourselves against peers. But working with a third party as well, you get to be able to compare with theirs, and they'll be able to look at the parts of the process. But how many vacancies, the cost of advertising. I'm going to come on to a question that's just been put in the chat about that one. Interviews agreed, no shows, the induction side of things. They're all things that if you do well, you can measure. But then you can also manage and you can look at areas of improvement and changing sort of the bottlenecks.
Yeah.
Or if people are starting and they're all leaving in 3 months, then you're not getting the right people with the right values. But it does come on to a point that was raised. Sorry, Steve.
No, I was going to say, sorry. What I want to make clear as well is that, look, don't. Some people say like, oh, we've got to get these stats. I know our no-show rates are terrible. That's going to make me look vulnerable. Please don't be scared of that. Like, if no-shows are a problem, you can look for help and you can look for professional advice. It's not your fault. So don't be afraid to look at the stats and the data.
Yeah. And so the question that went into the chat was that what we spend. What is the spend we should be using on job boards? At present, we have a budget of 500. Now, of course, that doesn't say whether it's 500 to attract 10 people or whatever, but you talked out of one of the earlier slides that the cost per hire should be between 180 and 285 pounds on advertising per head. So when you see something like a budget of 500, you would expect, if that's 500 pounds a month, you would be expecting to get kind of a couple of people for that, 2 people, based on your metrics.
Yes, I tell you what, Richard, if I had a pound for every time I get asked this question, I wouldn't be here today. I'm joking. I would still do this. It's the number one question I get asked every single day, and it's an impossible question to ask because it doesn't mean anything at this stage. How many people do you need to hire? What location are you based? So, the example I gave where they went from 900 to 1100 to 185, I think it was because they implemented our suggestions. So you have to do things internally in order to get that cost down. But whoever that person is, or if anybody asks that question, there's a hell of a lot more to that question because how many people do you need to hire? But you are right, Richard. If I'm in London and I've got £500, you should be looking to hire 5 people a month for that, easy. If you're in the middle of nowhere in North Wales and there's not a big population, you might only hire 1 or 2 people because your audience is smaller. So there's a hell of a lot that goes into that. It's not a one cost fix all. It doesn't work like that.
Now, and we talked about internet job boards, and that is the main way that care providers tend to recruit. But how can providers look at using social media and local community links more effectively to find candidates? Because there are alternatives to internet job boards.
God, yeah, absolutely there are. The reality is we've sort of become reliant on internet job boards and we are spending far too much money on them. There's no doubt about it. Some of the numbers I see are scary, and I shared one on the example earlier. The reality is marketing. I love marketing. I've got a degree in it and I find it fascinating. You need to have an unbelievable website and social media presence. Anybody who owns a care company, if their story, registered managers as well, I may add, if their story and their journey is not on the website and the social media pages, they are failing at marketing. Like the amount of registered managers that have amazing stories and anecdotes is, I would argue, every single registered manager, they all started in care, they've all worked there, worked to be a registered manager. So I want to know, if I apply for your care company, oh wow, look at this registered manager. Look what she does for charity. Wow, look at her personality. Wow, she's got 4 kids as well. I want to buy into you. I want to know about you. You can't do that on job boards. So if every care company sorted their social media and marketing out and had bios on their team, job board spend would go down significantly.
So really about using social media as a solution to attract people, but based on your stories, the anecdotes.
God, yeah. Yeah.
And
70, sorry,
quite a lot of
76,
way about the culture of
76%.
an organisation as well, can't you?
Yeah, well, 76% of carers in 2020, this is quite old now, but I imagine it's still relevant. 2024, 76% of carers who applied for a role on a job board went to the company's social media pages before they decided if they were going for an interview based on 4,000 carers being asked. So they're using the job board as a lead generation tool to get an interview. They're then going to the social media pages to try and find out about you as a care company. Why are they doing that? Because they want to know who they're going to be working for. Now, if your social media presence is non-existent and you don't sell your company, and the last post you did on social media was 1992, you don't even look like you're open. You know, you've got social media is an unbelievably underutilized tool for recruitment, no doubt about it.
And I think I'm just conscious of time now, and I want to sort of start to draw things to a close. But I think what I would like to leave you with is that if there was just one change that care providers who are on this call today could make to have the biggest impact on their organisations and their recruitment process, what should it be, Stephen? What's the one thing people should consider doing?
I would honestly, Richard, I would seriously implement values-based recruitment. Yeah, I really would. I can't sell it enough. Like you've got no idea how many people out there want to work in care. And I don't know if I spoke about this earlier. 73% of applications don't get a response. Like that is a frightening number. So imagine if that's 73% of people who've never worked in care. What message are we giving them when we're not replying to them? Not even a thank you for applying. Like, what does that tell people about care? Like, we're basically dismissing them before we've even given them a chance. So I would honestly implement values-based recruitment. Nobody has ever turned out bad in a care company for implementing values-based recruitment. It just simply doesn't happen. There's so many brilliant, beautiful people out there who want to work in care.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, look, I think we've got some great stuff in the chat here. Great one there for Kerry. Try using Google and Microsoft Forms. Use automated chasers, make it more sort of mobile friendly. Just a few things to look at. They're all really great kind of tips and hints on how people can do some great things. So, I mean, what you talked us through, Stephen, today has been fantastic. It's been practical, lots of practical tools, and a very thought-provoking sessions. And I think probably one of the key messages I'll take away from today is that recruitment is not simply about attracting more applicants necessarily. It's about ensuring that the process behind the recruitment process itself is efficient and responsive and designed to convert interest into commitment. And we're working in a very competitive labour market. Speed, ownership, and candidate experience can really make a difference between filling a vacancy and losing a candidate to another employer, be that a care organisation or the local Aldi or Lidl down the road. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who joined us today and who contributed to kind of questions and comments. We will circulate the slides and a copy of the recording shortly. And we hope you found the session useful. We'll make sure Stephen's contact details are provided in the follow-up materials. So if you do want to reach out to Stephen directly, you can do so. Just a huge thank you for joining. We'll give you 5 minutes of your day back. Stephen, please stay on the call and we'll say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers, guys. Take care.